Okay, I am standing here off of the old Harrisburg Road, and we are looking at the Plank Farm. And this video series is going to be about a man from Gettysburg named Edward Stewart Plank, who would become one of the greatest left-handed pitchers in Major League Baseball history. Eddie Plank, otherwise known as Gettysburg Eddie, would have a career that would give him 326 wins. And we're going to start this video series on the Plank Farm, which you see in front of us, just north of the town of Gettysburg along the old Harrisburg Road. And it was here on the early morning of July 1st, 1863, that Confederate General Jubal Early's division passed right by this very farm on its way to attack Union troops at Gettysburg on the northern side of the battlefield. And this farmhouse here was lived in by Eddie's parents, and Eddie would grow up here. Now, Eddie would not be born until August the 31st, 1875, 10 years after the American Civil War. However, Gettysburg would be an important part of his life. He would attend Gettysburg College and be on a varsity baseball team there. And he would go on to play professional baseball with the Philadelphia Athletics under the management of Connie Mack. And we are here at this farm where he spent the early years of his life. Eddie's father, David Luther Plank, would often scold Eddie for his powerful arm. He would practice throwing the ball against the barn door, and then sometimes shattering the door of the barn. One thing that they did have on the farm was a cannonball that was claimed to have been fired at the Battle of Gettysburg, and Eddie would use it as a shot put to throw around the yard. Today, this once farm has turned into the Hall of Fame Plank Estate housing development, which you can see here to the left, which encompasses a piece of the original Plank Farm. In our video series, we're going to take looks at different areas of Gettysburg in which Eddie lived. We're going to talk a little bit about his baseball career. He once owned a Buick dealership in the town of Gettysburg. We'll stop in there and take a look. And we will end the series at his gravesite in Evergreen Cemetery. Again, this is a video series called Eddie Plank, or Gettysburg Eddie at Gettysburg. Okay, in our next part, entitled Eddie Plank at Gettysburg, or Gettysburg Eddie, we're here along the old Harrisburg Road, and there's the sign today that we had talked about in our first part about this being Plank's Field, the Hall of Fame Estates, which is a newer housing development which once encompassed the Plank Farm, which is about a half a mile behind this white house here. Again, it sits on the old Harrisburg Road, which leads southbound into the town of Gettysburg. This was a route that was traveled by Confederate General Jubal Early's troops early in the morning on July 1st of 1863. Today, Plank's Farm is now Plank's Field, the Hall of Fame Estates. And this is just a little bit of history about this great Hall of Fame Major League Baseball player that was born in these very fields, or grew up rather in these very fields on the north side of Gettysburg. This has been our next part of Eddie Plank at Gettysburg. Okay, our next video is going to be shot here at Devil's Den. And this is our series Gettysburg Eddie, or Eddie Plank at Gettysburg. And we're standing just to the left of the Devil's Den marker sign here. Also, we did a video about Devil's Den, and this would be the Devil's Bath Rock here. And this little rock that seems to have like a smile, a half a smiley face on it, it was here on November the 6th, 1913, that Eddie Plank and Connie Mack drove in a 1914 Oakland Model 36 automobile, parked it right here, and stood for a photograph displaying their championship banner for the Philadelphia Athletics. A month earlier had pitched a 2-hit shutout, and the Philadelphia Athletics were world champions, and Connie Mack returned here to Gettysburg with Gettysburg Eddie and took a photo from this spot here that I'm standing in now. I thought I'd come out here and recreate the photo. I'll post it here on the video, but this spot is where Eddie Plank drove, or actually was a passenger in, a 1914 Oakland Type 36 automobile. Ironically enough, here it is 100 years later, and Oakland is now the city that the A's reside in. Back then they were in Philadelphia, today they are in Oakland. So this has been our next part on Eddie Plank at Gettysburg. Okay, I am standing here at the Gettysburg College Complex, right across from Huber Hall and just a few yards away from Heckman's 1st Ohio Light Artillery Monument here at the corner of Lincoln and Carlisle Street. And across the street is house number 343, and this is going to be our next part on Eddie Plank at Gettysburg here on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook and Gettysburg Battlefield Ultimate on YouTube. And this was the adult home of Eddie Plank and his wife Anna. During his Major League Baseball careers and after his retirement, he lived in this house until his death. In fact, Eddie Plank died in this house of a stroke on February the 24th, 1926, at the age of just 50. And again, this is the house he lived in after his baseball career, when he also ran a Buick dealership right off of the York Road, which today is Route 30, right at the corner of North Stratton Street. He ran a Buick dealership, a car garage. His brother Ira also ran a automobile dealership as well, and Ira, his brother, was also the baseball coach here at the college. There is a plaque, which I'll read, right across the street from his house here on the college complex, and it says, Eddie Plank, 1875 to 1926, baseball great, one of the most dominant pitchers of the 20th century. Gettysburg Eddie compiled a record of 326 wins and 194 defeats throughout his career, which spanned 1901 through 1917, mostly with the Philadelphia Athletics. He won 20 games or more 8 times and helped the A's to win 6 pennants and 3 world championships. Plank was born here, attended Gettysburg Academy, and retired and died in Gettysburg. He was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1946, and this Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission sign was placed here in the year 2000. So here we are at 343 Carlisle Street, the Plank home, the home of Eddie and his wife Anna Plank. Okay, we are here looking at this house at 42 East Lincoln Avenue here in Gettysburg. And after the death of Eddie Plank on February the 24th, 1926, Eddie's widow, Anna, and their son, Eddie Plank Jr., moved into this house. And this house sits here on Lincoln Avenue near the intersection of Stratton Street. And it was at the end of Stratton Street that Eddie Plank ran his Buick car garage. And it's just around the corner from the house that Anna and Eddie owned leading up to his death. Again, this was the house that Anna moved into as a widow after the death of her husband and Baseball Hall of Famer Eddie Plank in 1926. Part here of Eddie Plank at Gettysburg is going to take us to the corner of York and Stratton Street here in Gettysburg. Now, after his playing days were over, Major League Baseball player Eddie Plank had this building here. This was the Plank Garage. It was a Buick dealership where he sold cars, along with his brother, who had another dealership just down the road that sold Ford automobiles. But this was his Buick garage, and it was the former site of the Samuel Russell House, which the body of Amos Humstead was found. Again, this area in 1863, during the Battle of Gettysburg, the entire 11th Corps, or a good majority rather of the 11th Corps, came right up Stratton Street and headed back to the safety of Cemetery Hill in this direction here. And I'll post a photograph taken in 1867 from this vantage point showing the muddy streets. On July 3rd, 1863, Confederate General Jubal Early's troops, which had passed by the original Plank Farm, occupied this part of town from July 1st through the July 3rd of 1863. But again, the building here on the corner was the Eddie Plank Buick Garage that he owned and operated here in Gettysburg. One local resident said that the building was always full because everybody knew Eddie. Okay, we are here in Gettysburg Cemetery on our final part of Eddie Plank at Gettysburg here on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook, and we are at the grave site of Edward Plank, Baseball Hall of Famer. That's Edward Stewart Plank, one of the greatest left-handed Major League Baseball players of all time, pitched predominantly for the Philadelphia Athletics, and won 326 Major League Baseball games. And he is buried here in historic Evergreen Cemetery, and he is in Section X, lot number 219, and in grave 1. Evergreen Cemetery, of course, was established in 1854. As you look over here in the center of our camera, you can see the Evergreen Cemetery gatehouse. And just beyond this evergreen tree, you can see the John and Margaret McKnight House. Cemetery Hill, of course, was a major part of the battlefield here on July 1st and 2nd of 1863. Edward Plank, who would be born in 1875, as his grave says there, August 31st, 1875, would be born into the town that was already made famous by the Battle of Gettysburg. Today, when coming here, a lot of visitors often will leave little mementos on his grave, like I can see a baseball here in the vase. He is buried here alongside of his wife, Anna C. Myers, and also his son, Edward S. Jr., and his wife, Isabel. And just behind the gravesite for Edward Plank was also the grave of his brother, his younger brother, Ira Plank, right here, who owned a car dealership as Eddie did here in Gettysburg. This video series has not been about the American Civil War. It's been about a person, a famous person who lived here in Gettysburg, one of the greatest Major League Baseball players of all time, and maybe one of the most underrated baseball Hall of Famers. I do want to mention that during Eddie's lifetime, primarily, this cemetery area here wasn't as populated as it is today, and neither was there a big hotel next to the gravesite. In fact, one time the Gettysburg electric trolley passed just here where you see the hill, and you can go back and watch our video, the Gettysburg electric trolley, and that will pass right by, or not too far rather, from the grave of Edward Stewart Plank. This has been a video series on Baseball Hall of Famer and Gettysburg resident, Gettysburg's Eddie Edward Stewart Plank.